just after Arjuna, who was overpowered by conflict regarding his duty, surrendered to him and asked for his help. And Shri Krishna then had two goals in mind. One was, when anyone is in deep grief or sorrow, that person cannot think or cannot even hear you. So you need to go ahead and relieve that sorrow and grief to some extent. And of course, Arjuna's sorrow was caused by his deep attachment to his grandfather and guru. So that was his first goal. And the second goal was to persuade him to fight, because he had already sat down, put aside his weapons, and was not ready. So let's see how he tries to convince Arjuna. Now, he talked to him from three levels or three angles. The first viewpoint was a philosophical viewpoint. We call it the Adhyatmik Drishti, meaning, who are you? You are Atma, basically teaching, elaborating on Atma, Anatma, Vivek. Recognize your true nature. You're not this body, mind, intellect. So from Atma's standpoint, he says that Atma or the Dehi is eternal, immortal. It can never perish. So even Dronacharya's and Bhishma Pitamaha's Atma cannot perish, even if they are killed in the battle. So recall that point. Second, he says, from standpoint of Anatma, Anatma will always perish. It's mortal, and that's the law of creation. So body, mind, intellect, all of them being relatively Anatma will all be gone one day. Nobody can prevent it. So that is the other thing. Now, here I'll mention a true account I had recently read about of a Jewish scientist in Hitler's prison, a Mr. Viktor Frankl. He was, of course, subjected to terrible torture to get some information out of him. And he decided that I have to separate myself from my Anatma. He didn't call it Anatma, I'm calling it that, from the body and mind. And he went through everything that happened to him, totally detached. And he realized that, to his amazement, he never felt the pain from all the torture, etc. And ultimately, he survived. He came back to New York and he wrote a book. Meaning, or Searching for Meaning, is a book which is still available. It's a beautiful book. And in essence, I believe what this man did was he separated the Atma, Anatma, and held on to the fact that Atma is forever and really nobody can destroy him. And with that affirmation, he was able to stand up to suffering. Now you hear a lot of these accounts. I remember one Swamiji mentioning a lady who was diagnosed to have cancer, and she was going through a lot of turmoil. Ultimately, one day she decided that nobody can make her suffer if she didn't want to suffer. And that helped her a lot to overcome her problems and stay smiling throughout her terminal illness. So I think it seems all of this is about attitude control. In fact, that's the term Viktor Frankl uses in his book, that we need to learn how to control our attitude. And frankly, that's exactly what Bhagwan is telling us here. Let's see what he said further. Gita teaches us that the human mind is a marvel, the depth of which is not realized by most individuals in their lifetime. And if they were to come closer to it after studying Gita, that will make a big difference in the way they handle life and its problems. Second, so from this point, of course, from first point, Shri Krishna teaches Arjuna Atma, Anatma, Vivek. Then the second viewpoint is from the ethical standpoint, or from Dharmic Drishti. And that is what is morally and ethically upright as a human being on this planet. That's what you need to do. And here, of course, we have to remind ourselves of what Dharma stands for. Dharma stands for behavior that integrates, above all, integrates everybody, including our own mind and personality. Second, Dharma is interpreted as duty based on your varna, ashram, everything else, situations in life. Do your duty. Third, Swadharma, a lot of time is interpreted as your own nature or swabhav or your inborn disposition that you come with based on your vasanas from previous multiple lives. And how do you handle this swabhav and do things keeping in mind whatever is beneficial, you do it, whatever is prohibited and not good, you leave it aside. So aptitude, disposition is the other thing. Now, if you look at Arjuna, he was born in a royal family. By blood, he was Kshatriya. Kshatriya meaning a warrior or somebody who has been given the task in society to go ahead and protect people and be the champion of law and order, just like politicians or administrators of today and the defense and the police. So they have special tasks, and that's what Arjuna's duty was. And he had forgotten that when he broke down. Third, even by training, he's a Kshatriya, and so he must do his duty. That's what Shri Krishna tells him, don't waver from your swadharma, because that is going to incur papam. Now, what is papam? You know, some of us may not believe in papa punya, but we do know one thing, and we have all experienced that. Papam is guilt feeling, regrets, down feeling, negative thoughts, things that upset our mind, that agitate our mind. So papam is the result of such a thing, such behavior when you run away from duty. That is what Shri Krishna is reminding him. And above all, you know, society is like a human body. In a human body, when a part starts to rot by gangrenous changes, what do we have to do? The doctor will say this will poison the entire body. You have to amputate the part. You have to lose the part. Similarly, in a society, when there are wicked elements which are not reformable or who are not reformable, those have to be curbed. Those have to be removed for the safety of the entire society and protection of the society. And that's exactly what Arjuna's duty is, which he is now hesitating to do or decide not to do. Now, you may hear some people may say, okay, Dharma Shastras say that ahimsa paramo dharmaha. Ahimsa is what we must follow. So then how does this fit into the equation? Well, in any kind of injunction that Vedas give, there is always an exception. Even in the world today, any law has an exception. For example, regarding traffic, we all have to obey traffic rules and signs, etc. But some people are exempt. An ambulance, a fire brigade, a police car, they are exempt from this rule because there is a necessity. This is called apad dharma in case of crisis where things are modified. So ahimsa, although it is a great virtue, cannot be practiced by a kshatriya. It's his duty to eliminate evil. So not fighting such evil then becomes papam or adharma. So Arjuna, Shri Krishna says you can't recoil from your own duty, your own swadharma, especially for a righteous war. Now again, one may ask, can a war be righteous ever? Because it is so devastating for families, for individuals, etc. Yes, it can be righteous. Typically, a defensive war is righteous. Also, think of World War II, when there was this pernicious doctrine of Nazis that seemed to be very aggressive. The whole world gathered together to bring it down. And thank God they did. If they hadn't, we would have seen a very distorted, segregated, cruel world today. So I think it is right to say there is something called righteous war. Shri Krishna uses the word dharmic war, and he says, such a righteous war is almost an opportunity for Kshatriya to do what he's trained to do, to perform his duty, and to then, whether he lives through it or not, it is a win-win situation for him. Because if he doesn't live, he will go to Virya Swarg, Swarg for Vir Purushas or heroes, or he will be better off in next life, while if he dies, then he'll become a hero here in the world. For Arjuna, he would gain earthly kingdom. So basically, there is righteous war, and it has to be done. Now, sometimes people say Gita is a warmongering book when they have superficially read it. But remember, Gita is in Mahabharata. And in Mahabharata, there are so many short stories or incidents that precede the actual Kurukshetra war. And what are those? Those are where Pandavas are trying to negotiate with Kauravas regarding a small part of the kingdom, even 5 villages, 5 lands, etc., to get to do their little ruling and to live. But they are not even granted that. They are given. Shri Krishna goes to negotiate on their behalf, didn't work. So when all of these do not work, and in our Manu Smriti it is said that when Sam, Dan, Ved do not work, then you only have one thing left to do, and that is danda, meaning fight. You pick up your weapon and go. In fact, when Bhishma Mahapita was on his bed of arrows, all the Pandavas were asking for his advice, and Yudhishthir expressed his sentiment that seeing all this devastation after this war, I do not want to rule the kingdom. I want to recede to the forest. And at that time, Bhishmapita said to Yudhishthir, Dandam eva hi Rajendra, Shatra dharmo na mundanam. He says, you know what, Rajendra, or prince or king, Danda, protecting your people is your duty. This cannot be done, and you cannot do anything against the enemy if you shaved your head or became an ascetic. So very, very important that each one stationed wherever they are in this creation, do what they are meant to do. So that is our Krishna's advice. And he further, we have to remind ourselves that dharma has 2 aspects. Commission, where we are told to do certain things, and if we don't do it, it results in papam. And the other is omission, even the dharma of omission, something that person like Arjuna is called upon to do and he doesn't do it, that is a dharma. So commission, omission, both aspects are dharma. So he again, Arjuna was, of course, at this point behaving like a stale firecracker. In Gujarati, we call it fusfusiu. It's meant to give a big deafening noise, and you even put your hands on your ears to avoid it. And so it starts off, and then somehow, because it's stale, it just makes a little noise and vanishes. So that's what Arjuna was saying. He started off in chapter 1 by saying, Krishna, please take me in the middle of the 2 armies so I can view who wants to fight with me. And then now he's at a stage where he's ready to escape. So let's see now, third point of view. Up to this, I think you covered in last two classes. So the third point of view, which we will take up today, is the Laukik Drishti, or the worldly point of view, which we can all relate very well to. And this will be in verses 34 to 37. We'll try to see. And if there's time, we'll see verse 38 as well. The crux of what Shri Krishna tells him is, if you don't fight, others will speak ill of you. They'll slander your good name and fame. And dishonor will be your lot for generations to come. Do you want that? Think of it. That's what Shri Krishna will tell him. And there's an expression in English, death before dishonor. And we know even during India's freedom fight and all, this was a common sentiment among everybody, aroused by Gandhiji's views and other things. They all were ready to sacrifice, take lathi, baj, and whatever for the sake of the country. So when you have a higher goal, you can sacrifice your lower sentiment. So here the idea is, you cannot let your honor go. That would be worse than death for a heroic person. Now, these days, honor has no place or has very little place. And we can see that people, if they are out to get money or to get name and fame, they don't care about honor. By hook or crook, they want to get to that point. So they don't even understand this, death before honor, dishonor. And I think it's sad that the sense of honor is rapidly going down. And in fact, we have instances where a bank robber goes to prison, starts writing a book, sells it in millions. People are curious to see what he did and how he did it, and gets rich and famous. So it's a very topsy-turvy ethical world today. So anyway, with this background, let's start with verse 34. We'll chant in the usual manner, 4 padas, lead and repeat, and then the whole verse together. Verse 34. Akirtim chapi bhutani kathayishyanti te vyayam sambhavitasya cha kirtihi maranadapi richyate. Together. Akirtim chapi bhutani kathayishyanti te vyayam sambhavitasya cha kirtihi maranadati richyate. So Bhagavan says, Akirtim cha api bhutani. Akirtim, when you add earth to kirtim or glory, it becomes tarnishing your glory, cha, and will also api bhutani. So all will tarnish your glory. Ill fame will come to you, Arjuna. Kathayishyanti te avyayam. And this will happen by them saying, talking forever and ever about your transit or exit from the war. In modern days, they may write books, they may have radio shows, TV shows, whatever, to demonstrate the dishonor. Then sambhavitasya cha akirtihi, having gained name and fame as a courageous warrior, that's how they regard you today. Akirtihi, dishonor, is worse than death. Maranat atirichyate. Akirtim will become worse than death for you. And even all of us, in anything we do today or anything that happens in our family, not very desirable, the first thing that comes in our head is, what will people say? What are they going to think about me and my family? I come from such a respectable family and my son is doing this or my daughter has done this. This is a very common thought that comes to us. It's because we all value our position, status in society, and we don't want to lower it in any way. And of course, Arjuna has a very strong Rajasic ego, being a warrior. And so for him, this will definitely prick when Shri Krishna says that. And he will be bothered. So, and Shri Krishna again reminds him, you first decided to fight, and now you want to leave the battleground and withdraw. What will people say? You'll go down in history as the one who abandoned his army or his people at the time of need. And, you know, this manam or honor being greater than life itself, it was a very common sentiment expressed in our history and Purana. In fact, even in Ramayana, when Kaikeyi is asking Dashrath Maharaj for boons, after she had asked, he said no first, till Kaikeyi used the last weapon, that in Raghuvansh, no one yet has ever not kept their promise. And when she said that, Dashrath had to relent and swoon or faint. And that is what how things were in the olden days. And actually, even today, you hear of, you know, students when they are A grade student and then they get a B or a C. There are students who feel so bad about that honor of being high-ranking student that they resort to ending their lives. And that is still seen today. So Shri Krishna, back to his advice to Arjuna. Arjuna, think of how important honor is to you. All will be belittling you, giving you infamy for generations to come. They have not recognized that your intent to live is due to your nobility, to regard your elders. They are not seeing that. That's invisible. They are only seeing you escaping, and they will consider it an act of cowardice. So now, let's see what people will say. Chant verse 35. Bhayat ranat uparatam mansyante tvam maharathaha yesham cha tvam bahumataha bhutva yasyasi laghavam. Together. Bhayat ranat uparatam mansyante tvam maharathaha yesham cha tvam bahumataha bhutva yasyasi laghavam. So he says, hey Arjuna, bhayat ranat uparatam. Bhayat, out of fear. Ranat, from the battleground. Uparatam, if you flee. Tvam mansyante maharathaha. What will the great commanders on the Kaurava side say? Maharathaha, great commanders. Mansyante, will think and say, tvam, of you. Yesham cha tvam bahumataha. In the minds of these commanders, up to now, they regard you highly. They regard your prowess, your ability to fight, your strength, might, very highly. But what will happen next? Bhutvaya syasi laghavam. Bhutva, you will become laghavam, small, or fall in their eyes. Yasyasi, you'll become small in their eyes. They'll say you are an escapist. So as we said earlier, since Arjuna's reason for fleeing is not observable or seen, they will interpret his going due to fear. And in fact, they will spread many rumors. And what's worse than this, Arjuna, Shri Krishna says, and of course, he's trying to cause more pain in Arjuna's mind, as Arjuna still has not moved at all, in spite of all these verses earlier. So let's see what he says next in verse 36. All of them are very much same. Avachya vadamscha bahun vadishyanti tavahitaha nindantastava samarthyam tato dukkhataram nukim. Together. Avachya vadamscha bahun vadishyanti tavahitaha nindantastava samarthyam tato dukkhatarantu nukim. So he's asking him a question. Your enemies will speak very indecent words while criticizing your ability and your might and prowess. What can be more painful than this, Arjuna? Cha tava ahitaha. Tavahitaha, broken down as tava ahitaha. Ahita means shatru or enemy. And besides, your enemies, tava, your enemies, vadishanti bahun avachya vadan. Vadishanti will speak, bahun, many, numerous, avarcha vadan, indecent, unutterable words. They will slander you. Nindanta, again, scorning, slandering, tava samarthyam. They will next attack what they don't like to see in you, which is your might and power and ability in archery, etc. And they know your might. They know that by your duet with Shivji, you were able to procure with his, shall we say, grace, the Pashupat Shastra while you were in the forest. So they all know this. They know his ability, his preparation for the war, etc. So samarthyam, they know your might. Kimnu dukktaram tataha. What can be more painful than that is what Shri Krishna says. They are going to say things that's going to pierce your heart and attack you, criticize your talents. And there cannot be any greater sorrow than this form of criticism. Again, of course, talking to Arjuna, who has Rajasic ego and a great sense of honor. So Arjuna, Shri Krishna implores, you have not thought of all this from all these angles. You need to. Adhyatmic angle, dharmic angle, and laukik angle. Then only you should decide what to do. Also, earlier you expressed to me in chapter 1, you expressed a doubt whether you are going to win or they are going to win. Now, I'm God. He may not have said that, but he implied, Shri Krishna implied, I'm God. I can tell you that there are only two possibilities. Either you will die fighting, and then you will go to Veer Swarga, like we said earlier, or you will live and attain this earthly kingdom and rejoice thereafter, enjoy the kingdom. So these are the only two possibilities, he says. Therefore, he tells us in verse 37, and we'll chant that next. Hato va prapsyasi swargam jitva va bhokshase mahim tasmat uttishta kaunteya yuddhaya krita nishchayaha. together. Hato va prapsyasi swargam jitva va bhokshase mahim tasmad uttishta kaunteya yuddhaya krita nishchayaha. So he says here, Hey Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Hatova prapsyasi swargam. Hatova, if you are killed or if you lose, you'll attain heaven. Prapyasi, attain, swarga, heaven, means you'll have better things in afterlife. And as I said, Krishna doesn't say it, but implies, I know, I'm God. And then second, jitva va, or if you win, having won, bhokshase mahim, mahim means earth or bhumi, bhokshase, you will enjoy the earth kingdom. Meaning in either case, you cannot be a loser. You only will gain something or the other. Either you'll get swarga or better afterlife, or you'll get better life in this kingdom as a Raja or as a royal family. So then he says, that's why, tasmad, therefore, uttishta, stand up, Arjuna, Kaunteya, kruta nishchayaha yudhyaya. Kruta, having resolved, nishchaya, having resolved, having made the determination that I will fight for my people, yudhaya, enter the war or defeat the enemy. So, here one may say, okay, what about the third possibility? POW, people are taken captive and they suffer. Well, Krishna knew his friend very well, Arjuna. He knew he was Veera, he was very Gambhir, he was very Pratapi. He knew Arjuna will never let himself be captured. He will either die or he will be defeating someone. So this expression, uttishta, and very commonly with the second word, jagrat, is a very common expression we see in our Shruti. Uttishta means get up, arise, and jagrat, wake up. Don't be daydreaming. And what does this mean? Don't be lazy and cozy in these winter days. Be very alert and vigilant when it comes to doing anything. Of course, we all have our rest periods and all, but don't spend time in being lazy and cozy. Time is precious, never comes back. Losing money is okay. Losing time is not very okay. Of course, losing character is worst. So must remember, time is very precious. And what is our tendency? When any difficulty comes or any sorrow comes, we just say, I'm going to sleep over it. I'm going to rest and then think about it. I'm not in a mood to think about it right now. I remember a partner of mine who was an avid farmer too. And his relaxation was bush hogging on his tractor. So he would tell me if I asked, and he was our head of the group. So if I asked him, how about this for our group or whatever on Friday, he would say, can you wait for the answer till Monday? I'm doing bush hogging. I'll have time to think and I'll let you know what I think about it. So you need a calm mind to think. And it's very important to realize that. And you need a mind that is alert and vigilant, like Gurudev says. In fact, there's a very famous verse in our Manusmriti and in some of the Puranas, that by daydreaming, you don't achieve anything. Means by brooding or thinking of something while you're doing something else, you don't achieve anything. And you can't get anything either. And they give an example of an old lion sitting with his mouth wide open and waiting for a deer to jump into it for his food. Now, that's not going to happen. We know that, right? So effort, very important. Calm mind, very important. We'll talk about it a little later. But in fact, in this last verse, which is, I think, one of the most important verse of Gita, verse 38, Shri Krishna gives Arjuna advice as to with what attitude should he fight. And this is advice to all of us. Now, first we must understand that yuddha, or he's not talking of yuddha or war, and we all don't have to go to war, but we are all warring our problems and issues in our day-to-day life. Everything we are looking at, some of it is difficult for us, and we are in effect warring to try to resolve that issue. So, and we also know that duties can be of two types. One can be pleasant duty, like somebody introducing a guest speaker or giving vote of thanks, or an unpleasant duty when we get ruffled, when we have to say discipline an employee or fire the employee. It can be a very difficult situation. And that is the kind of situation our Arjuna is having right now. That's his problem. It's an unpleasant duty. He doesn't want to do it. So Bhagavan actually also introduces the next phase of his teaching in this, following this verse. So this verse 38 is often called a transition verse between Jnana Yoga that he already talked about as Sankhya Yoga, and now comes the big thing, Karma Yoga, the way to act in this world. Very, very practical Vedanta. What we have to all learn to make our life more efficacious and more pleasant, joyful, and give joy to others around us. It is so simple. One wonders why one can't do it. It's a, religion is a way of life, Vivekananda said. And that is how this Karma Yoga is. It is, he's just introducing the topic. Karma Yoga is mentioned everywhere in Gita, in various chapters, especially chapter 3. But the idea is, this is our Lord Krishna's original philosophy. Although most of the facets are derived from Upanishads, it is the way he puts it in a very practical way that you and I can understand, and understand how to act. How do we have to train this marvel of our human mind that is capable of so much, but we just sit, accept what is there, meaning the load of vasanas, and act accordingly. We don't even have the thought of saying, wait, vasana, I'm not permitting you to influence me at this time because you are not desirable. So that kind of a thing. So the message is, learn to be balanced in mind. We use this word balance very often, but remain cool in all situations, adverse or otherwise. Samatvam yoga uchyate. That's what Shri Krishna will say later, not in this few verses. Samatvam, sama, equanimity. Noun, samatvam. Yoga uchyate. Yoga, the way to unite with your higher self, your own higher nature. Samatvam is the key. And what is this attitude? This is the attitude with which you do everything in life. In fact, I think Rumi said, if I'm not mistaken, that when I woke up, I realized life is duty. In his dream, he was having pleasures. When he woke up, he said, I realized life is duties. And life is mainly duties, whichever way you look at it, whether it's duty to yourself, to your family, to the nation, and to the world at large. Preservation of ecosystems, all of that is part of human duty, which we don't realize. The Panch Mahayagnas that we have to think of every day as our contribution, like our Chinmaya Mission pledge says, contribution to the world and to people around us. And another thing he says is that when your attitude is a calm mind, then you have maximum thinking capacity, maximum discriminating capacity to come to a right decision as to how you must act. We all know how a calm mind is so essential to think of anything, whether it's your subject matter or any issue at hand, whatever. So very important to do that. And here, I want to bring up something that even modern psychology considers equanimity as the greatest thing that ensures successful life. They call it the EQ, emotion quotient, not IQ, emotion quotient. And they have shown in various studies, clinical trials, that EQ is greater than IQ for success in a person's life. You can be very intelligent, but if your EQ is low, you are a disturbed person. Even if you know everything, for example, in an examination, you are scared when you don't know the first question very clearly. And that brings your emotional state, brings you down, you slide down. And in spite of your knowledge, you cannot perform. So EQ, in fact, we can say that EQ is equivalent to what Shri Krishna calls samatvam in Gita. Same thing, that improve your EQ by understanding the real state of affairs, in the world. So real state meaning learning to handle your life, learning to realize that what comes to you is something that you have to face. Nobody else can do it for you. They may be able to help, but they can't do it for you. You have to do it yourself. That gives you the courage to face up to it. And slowly your EQ can be reduced. And to say this, of course, again, affirming that handle your mind first in mind. Each of us has to learn that, handling our own mind. And then we should act in the world. Difficult task at hand, but let's see. We'll chant verse 38. I would encourage everybody to memorize it if you can, and remind yourself whenever you have a difficult situation, because it'll keep you at ease right away. So he says, Sukha dukkhe same krutva labha labho jaya jayau tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papamavapsyasi. Sukha dukkhe same krutva labha labho jaya jayau tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papamavapsyasi. Very important verse. Keep your equipoise. And why can't we keep it? Because we have strong likes and dislikes. That's our problem. And we don't mind even exhibiting it. Oh, I love this. I don't like this. I'm even stronger word. I hate this. So that has to be brought down, because when you have that in mind, you will want particular result of your action. And if you don't get it, you are unhappy. If you get it, you are excited. Both ways, your mind is up and down. So to stay balanced, you have to equalize all pairs of opposite, be it winter, summer, etc. So same krutva, the verb, with sama, equanimity, meaning without raga dvesha, equalize all pairs of opposites. And he mentions three of them: sukha dukkha, joy, sorrow; labh, alabh, gain, loss. And he mentions jaya, ajaya. Jaya, victory, or you can call it success today, and ajaya means failure. So equalize these pairs of opposite. Only when you equalize it, and with that attitude, tato yuddhaya yujyasva, with that attitude, Arjuna, you fight the war, and people here, please go ahead and approach life. That's our message, that you go ahead and work in this world. Raga, so, tato yuddhaya yujyasva, naivam papam avapsyasi. Then you will not incur papam. And remember what we call papam? Guilt, regrets, bad feelings, negative feelings, anger. All of that is part of papam. So in fact, Shankaracharya ji in his comments in his Bhashya on this verse says that raga dvesha akrutva, undoing your strong likes and dislikes, is the key to changing your attitude, controlling your attitude in life. People can do anything to you, but after they've done something, they have walked away. But what happens to us? We are miserable for days at end, brooding over that thing. And that's when the little thing that was done to us snowballs into a huge thing that throws us into depression. That is what is our history, or what we do every day, or what happens to us every day. So Bhagavan says, if it's your duty, kartavya, you can't have likes and dislikes. And a lot of us do that, taking care of elderly, etc. We do it as a duty. Then you can't have likes and dislikes. You can't say, okay, I'm not going to remove the diaper, but I can do everything else. You can't do that. There's no choice. If you do it with that bhav, this has to be done, just do it. Nike learned it long ago from Bhagavad. Just do it. Don't think of, what you go through. Just do it. So has to be done, what come may. And that is the attitude with which we must do it. Now, here you have to remember, Bhagavan is not telling us that I promise you success in every venture you do. He's not saying that. He's saying that I just want you to learn how to face situations. What you get in life, your destiny, is your own doing from the past. But your willpower or self-will will allow you to receive that in the best possible manner. And that is what I'm asking you to do. And if you work with this attitude, you will always gain spiritually. You may not gain materialistically sometimes, but you will gain spiritually. You will grow through adversity. It is said that adversity brings a person closer to oneself, because that's when you realize your weaknesses, your strengths, and recognize who you are as a person. So in conclusion, I want to say a few things we should take home. Train your mind to stay calm and even in all circumstances. Decrease strong likes and dislikes. Very important to do that. Work hard, calmly, silently, steadily. And then you are no longer a creature of circumstances, but you're handling life in a masterly way. You're doing the best you know to do, and you're doing it in a very thoughtful way. This is called freedom. Really, in a way, mukti, ultimately. That is what it is, because then you will have time to see that you are no different than the whole Srishti. You are one with them. And so what you do for yourself, you will do for others too. So very, very important to remember that. And, human mind can achieve this steady wisdom or perfect steadiness. And after Bhagavan talks about it in next few verses, he will go ahead and illustrate it to Arjuna and to us in form of a man of steady wisdom, Sthita Prajna Lakshanas, in the last 18 verses of the chapter, where you will then believe that, yes, such a person can exist and live on this earth. So I can do it too. And I think at present we are wise in some ways, but our wisdom comes and goes. In dire situation, it leaves us. So I think we have to attain that steadiness of wisdom so that then we can face anything. And we can do this by training. Bhagavan calls it abhyas, abhyas, abhyas. And I remember one Swamiji saying that we don't recognize how marvelous this mind is because we haven't touched even the superficial layers of the mind. We are just living without much thinking. As you go deeper and deeper, you realize the great equipment that a human birth is endowed with, and that can make such a difference between making a life worth living versus and enjoying living versus miserable life. So I'll stop here. We'll say our ending prayer. Next week, Shrutita ji will continue the actual verses on Karma Yoga, which is again the most important topic in Gita for us. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Hari Om.